Ed Bernstein Show. Here's Ed.
We're down here at the Mob Museum, which continues to have not only incredibly educational, but interesting guests and experiences. With me now are two gentlemen who can really talk about crime, drugs, and any variation of either one. Luis Rodriguez, who, I don't know, do I refer to you as a former
gang member, I guess is one way to say it. Yeah.
And drug addict?
Former drug addict.
And drug addict,
Yeah.
And turned your life around, and
Yeah.
now you're an inspiration and mentor to youth all over the place.
Work with a lot of kids.
Wrote this book,
kids.
Always Running, very famous book, 30th year edition.
Yeah.
And Gabe Morales, who you know a little bit about police work. This man has been in Homeland Security, in the prison system, the Marine Corps, ICE. He's seen it all. My first question is to either of you. How much of a factor is drugs to crime? What is that relationship? And if we really did stop the flow of drugs into the United States, what effect would it have on crime? Either of you guys.
Well, having been on heroin, I was 7 years in heroin when I was a teenager. I would say that it has a big change. It changes everything. It changes even whatever, like in the gang, we used to have what we had was called palabra, which is trust. You trusted people. You had your word. Drugs doesn't care about that. Doesn't care about loyalties. Doesn't care about everything. Falls apart. The fellowship of drugs destroys any kind of whatever good was that people got together for. It destroys it because then you're only caring about the next fix. You only care about what you have to do to steal, whatever. So drugs, it comes into the streets and comes into the prison system. It really destroys anything that's of value, I think. And so I think it plays a bad role. Now, the other side of it, though, is I feel that the best thing to do with drugs is treatment. Give people the best help they can. Give them treatment. I don't think it needs to be kind of a thing where people feel like they need to be shamed for being drug addicts. Drug addiction is real. It happens to people, regular people, when you go and get opioids and everything. So I think that people just need to take that shame away and give the treatment that people need. It's a matter of a cultural change so that people don't feel like it's all going to be the worst thing that can happen. You can change your life if you get the proper help and assistance and treatment.
Gabe, we have more people in prison in the United States than any other country in the world. If we were able to, somehow fix our drug problem here in the United States, would that impact significantly what's going on in prisons?
Oh, most definitely. Most offenders that are locked up in jail and prisons have been addicted to drugs or alcohol, which is a drug, or both. And also you have mental illness issues, which is a reason why I think a lot of people do take drugs, self-medicate, because they haven't dealt with certain issues, especially men. And I think Luis will agree with me. Mm-hmm. More than 90% of our incarcerated population are men. And I've always wondered because they say that the population is like 51% females to 49% men,
right?
Something close to that anyways. And I always wondered why it wasn't more even. And having worked in the system over 30 years, I saw a lot of damaged men. And for a lot of reasons, it seems to be okay for females to get help, whether it be drug addiction or alcohol or mental health. Men, a lot of them will shy away from that because they feel to ask for help is to not be a man. It's a manly thing to admit that you're weak, that you need help. And so a lot of them self-medicate and become drug addicted. And so it's a huge problem that I don't think we're going to fix. We can try to cut off the supply, Ed, but until we fix the demand.
And how do you do that?
Yeah.
I can remember as a kid, with Nancy Reagan, just say no. Didn't work.
Nope.
It's ridiculous, right? Somebody addicted to drugs not going to listen to First Lady saying that.
Something, because I think what Gabe says is very important. This idea of the distorted male. I grew up I was a sensitive kid growing up, like most boys and girls. But that you couldn't be sensitive from my neighborhood. It was a rough neighborhood. If you like to be in your imagination, you didn't want to play all the time in the street like everybody else. Something was wrong with you. People would push you. Even my mom would hit me with a ball. Go out there and play. It's like, what's wrong with you? You're not a man. And you grow up with this distorted idea of maleness, and you can't cry, and you can't feel, and you get very detached. And it's a mutated maleness that I think is hurting men, because then they're not fully human. And also hurts women and children if they get involved with them, they end up being abusive. So I think we have to deal with this issue of what it is to be a man, the fullness of a man. Not this kind of narrow idea of this is what a man is, this tough guy that has to do all these tough things and never be fully human.
And you advocate some of those, like the arts, and working with the arts, working with poetry and writing and theater.
I take that into prisons. I take it to juvenile halls. I know it transforms people because they realize that they're actually, to be human is to be creative. To be creative means you can have agency. People don't know this, and they think they have no agency. Like, one of the biggest things about being in a gang I felt was the fatalism. You're in the gang, that's it. There's no way out, no way to, you're never gonna be anything. Just this is it, the fatalism of you gotta do what the gang does, you gotta do what the drug does. You turn yourself over to other things, a gang, drugs, and you're never yourself. And I have to teach young people and others, get back to owning your life, not just turning it over to other things. What is your life? Who are you? And where's your agency? Where's your creativity and imagination?
And you both have a lot of experience with gangs, whether inside prison or out on the street. And is this a carrot and a horse thing? I mean, what comes first? Are the gangs on the outside, then creating more gangs on the inside, or is it vice versa, or is it a circle?
Well, I think what it is there's a lot of empties. I call it empties. You might have empties in your home. Maybe your parents are all working and nobody's home. Maybe you got other issues. Your family's kind of broken or empty. You got empties in the community. Not enough social recreation, not enough things to do. I lived in a very poor neighborhood. There was nothing there. Or you got personal empties. You don't know who you are. You don't know what you're about. You know what I'm saying? I think gangs, drugs, all these things try to fill those gaps. And they fill them. Not everybody's going to fall for them. Because even in the worst gang neighborhoods, the majority of kids aren't in gangs. Mm-hmm. But you have enough of them who say, man, I need to fill this. They don't even have a conscience. They fill those empties with these things that are not really good for them. They're unhealthy, but they think they are. They think this is what's going to give me my fullness, whatever they think it is. So I think trying to address empties in the communities, in the families, and in the people, I think would help tremendously.
But when somebody does commit a crime and they get sent to prison, then Gabe, you see them there, you put them there, and you're dealing with this, and you've worked in prisons for quite a while. The gangs run the prisons, right?
They do in a lot of them, yes. We have a book I wrote, The History of the Mexican Mafia. It's very interesting, their development. They started off as teenage boys in the California Youth Authority at the Dual Vocational Institute in Tracy, which is an institution they shut down. But at that time, they had youthful offenders, juvenile declines, they call them a lot of times today. So juveniles serving time in the adult system. And just like we said, a lot of them had a void in their souls, their minds, their spirit, their way of thinking was that this was the way to live. To be a Mexican, proud to be a Mexican, you're in the Mexican Mafia, because they're very good at pushing cultural pride, which is something that a lot of these boys will gravitate to that may not be taught in the education system. And they learn about their culture, their language. They feel good. The gangs are very good, like Luis said, about promoting certain aspects that are positive, but then they turn it into something else. So then the Mexican Mafia started preying on other Mexicans, which is something that we see in our communities today. We see mostly Hispanics killing other Hispanics. It's mostly blacks killing other blacks. And in spite of systemic racism, which I believe does play a role, is mostly them preying on their own. And so here comes something that's positive. they're able then to turn that into something negative and justify that they're proud to be a Mexican, being a warrior by taking out somebody who looks just like them, that doesn't have anything just like them, whether it be blacks versus Mexicans, Mexicans versus Mexicans, or any other race, really. Anybody who's poor, that doesn't have anything, that's incarcerated, that's probably doing drugs, that's in that lifestyle. And so it becomes, yes, very much a vicious cycle. And it's unfortunate, but a lot of these youth and a lot of these barrios, I think Luis would verify, they may not know who some of these politicians are. They may know who the president is. Maybe they don't like him. Maybe they don't like him. They may know a certain sports player, but I guarantee you they know who all the gang leaders are in their neighborhood, who's calling the shots, the shot callers, they call the veteranos.
I mean, so the problem to me seems like it's been here forever. It's gotten worse. Is there a solution out there?
Well, let me just say, for example, the first gangs in the U.S. were immigrants from Europe. You know, mostly Irish, but there were Italians.
But it's always immigrants from wherever, whether it's Jewish, Irish, and Italian, right?
The reason why is they came to communities that marginalized them, jumped on them, made fun of them, dismissed them. So I think that's part of the problem. If you
It's
have
a self-esteem issue.
Yeah, you have to be embracing of people. If you're gonna say to come on in, you gotta embrace them. But what happens when you knock people down? They eventually, some of them start feeling like, well, where's my worth? And I think sometimes they gravitate towards what I think is false ideas about what it is to be Mexican, or what it is to be Irish, or whatever. Like the white skinhead gangs, a lot of them have Irish. They want to be Irish, they want to be white, but it's all distorted. There's beautiful cultures, you know, among the Celtic and whatever, but they don't really understand that. Just like there's beautiful cultures among the Chicanos, Mexicanos, the Mexicans, that the Mexicas, the Mayans, they're beautiful, but they really don't understand it. They only get a superficial sense of it, because they want to be proud about something, but they get it superficially because they're fighting against a world that dismisses them. And I think what would be very important is for us to be aware, because I know that what stopped a lot of the Irish and Italian, that's, you know, in the East Coast, was settlement houses. Jane Addams created it in Chicago, and they went all over. They started working with the kids. They started giving them things to do. They started giving them arts. And I know, because I lived in Chicago 15 years, and some of the settlement houses are still there. There's no more Irish or Italian or Ukrainians. Now it's Mexicans, Puerto Ricans, or blacks. But they were there, but they're not like they were in those days. They actually stopped the Irish gangs that went about 2 or 3 generations, and they stopped them. They didn't do that with the Chicano gangs or the black gangs. They've been going generation after generation. Not enough things came in to help them, or if it did, it went away. So I think we have to be aware that we can fill those gaps and get people to understand who they really are without having to do it superficially.
It seems like right now the administration is concerned about removing anybody who may be here illegally. It's a big number. Although, you know, during the election, people are running for election, we're going to remove all the violent ones. I mean, there's a significant difference, and there's news reports that both are being removed. You two gentlemen have a very unique perspective, whether it's personally, ethnically, for each of you, as well as professionally with your experiences in being immigrants and being in living with immigrant gangs, and you arresting them and caring for them in the prisons. What is it that we're missing here when it comes to immigration? I mean, there has to be a happy medium where you can control the border, get in the people who are hardworking, paying taxes, doing and following the laws, and really focusing on those who are not. I mean, what do we have to do differently?
Well, you know, I think that one of the things is to recognize that the vast majority of them are hardworking, good people. And they come to work and they come to contribute, and they do. That's the reality. If a few of them fall into gangs or in trouble, I understand that. I understand why people are concerned, but they're really minor. Like, for example, they talk about MS-13. MS-13, even though it's a very large gang, is still less than 1% of all the gangs in the United States. Supposedly there's 1 million gang members. MS-13 is only 1%. And MS-13 supposedly has 10,000 members in the U.S. Who knows? These are FBI figures. Who knows? But even with 10,000, it's not like they're killing 10,000 people. It's not like they're all murderers. Some of them have layers. Some of them are hanging honors. Some of them are just using the name. Some got tattoos. They don't got anything. But a few of them are doing the damage. People can address that. That's not what's happening. They're doing a vast sweep. The 70% of the people they've been picking up since June in L.A. have been non-violent, non-criminal, undocumented people. They're not really the ones that they're supposed to be.
And you worked for ICE. I mean, does ICE know that when they're arresting these people?
Yes, they do now. What we've seen recently is a big change. I think, and we talked about this before the show, Ed, I think most people agree that if you're a violent offender, a murderer, rapist, child predator, a violent individual, you don't belong here. You may not belong in your own country.
Right.
They would lock you up there. And those people still, though, deserve to go through the criminal justice system and have due process, because it's still innocent until proven guilty, whether you're a citizen or not. That's in the Constitution. You have certain rights. It doesn't say, if you're waving the American flag, if you're a card-carrying, blue-eyed, fair-skinned American, then you get these rights. No, everybody, it says. All the people. And so some politicians have then interpreted it in the Supreme Court, and the Senate and other people have interpreted to limit those rights that we've had for generations. And so that's what has happened recently, I believe. And yes, they're just going after anybody. There's been efforts at immigration reform that have been shot down by certain individuals. And it's always been a problem. It's always been a problem since the beginning of this country. My great-grandmother was Yaqui. She went across the border, the Arizona border, what is now Arizona. It was part of Mexico back then.
Right.
So there was no border. A lot of us say, we didn't cross the border crossed us. So a lot of Native Americans, feel that way too. It's like, where we go? You're stopping us. What do you mean this is our country?
As Mexicans, I have a book called From Our Land to Our Land, because the same reason my mother's Raramuri, which is Tarahumara. Mm-hmm. So we have tribal roots. I'm half Native. I did my DNA. There's Iberian, all kinds of stuff. Mm-hmm. Sometimes I'm more Native by DNA than a lot of Native Americans. Right. But they treat us as if we're foreigners and strangers. We actually have roots in this land as deep as anyone, mm-hmm. but we're not treated that way. So I think these are the kind of things that people have to take into account. I agree that due process is not being used. People are being held and treated really badly. I mean, I live in a community that has 80% Mexican Central American, 500,000 people. We got hit hard in June when the ICE came. Hit hard. And what I saw they weren't getting the gang kids. They weren't. They were getting these peddlers, food, people selling food. They were getting people in the corner. They were getting the Home Depot. That's what got everybody going. They were going to Home Depot. It's like, these are the people trying to contribute, and they're treating them really bad. They're tackling them. They're detaining them. They're doing things that you would do maybe to somebody who actually was a mass murderer or whatever, but they don't. In other words, you get the injustice. You see it constantly. And in our community, we don't distinguish between undocumented and documented. They all contribute. We do know that there's gang kids, and I work with the gang kids. We've actually lowered the crime in Los Angeles, which was worse than Chicago. In the 90s, it was the worst gang city in the whole world. In the 90s, Chicago and LA were vying for the gang capitals of the world. LA was actually worse than Chicago. But since 2008, if you look at the statistics, the gang violence has gone down, gang involvement has gone down, because there's been a lot of community involvement, gang intervention, peace, urban efforts, wraparound programs. There's been a lot of things. There was the GRID program that the LA City started to do. There was things going on, and we lowered the crime rate. So they're coming in at a time when we have hardly any crime or gang involvement. So these people they're getting are not the gangsters. They're the regular people that are part of our community. Some of them been there 20, 30 years.
And what's the public opinion in the immigrant communities about what's going on right now with the sweeps that ICE is making? Because it seems to me, I mean, you look at polling on the news, it looks like a lot of people are okay with it.
Yeah, I think they're polling the non-immigrant people community. I think most in my community, because we see it as a horrendous thing. They're, like I said, the community is not being terrorized by gangs. It used to be a lot of gang area. Mm-hmm. That part of the valley, Northeast Valley, you had Pacoima, San Fer, you had all these gangs, and they're still around, but their numbers have gone down. We're seeing it as they're terrorizing. I'm talking about ICE, Homeland Security, not gangs. They're being terrorized by the government. They're coming in there, and this shouldn't be what the government should do. That's what they're doing. They're terrorizing communities that were safe and doing well. I can prove statistically that we were actually doing quite well, and here they're coming in there and undermining and dismantling the community that we spent a long time building, a long time trying to get together. That's what I think people don't see and don't understand. These are not criminal havens. They're communities of hardworking people.
I wanted to ask you, Luis, because you mentioned earlier you were in a prison in El Salvador. Mm-hmm. I was there a couple. I've been there a couple of times, but I was there during the first inauguration of Bukele when he became president. Mm-hmm. When I was there in that trip, I was given a 2 or 3 car escort to take me around the country because it was too dangerous to even get out of your car in some parts of El Salvador. The president there built some of the world's largest prisons and arrested basically anybody who he thought was a criminal, put them into custody. I'm sure there's a lot of innocent people that were swept up into that. Fast forward now, it's been, 6 years or so that he's been president there. El Salvador, safe as could be to walk around.
Well, let me just give some little background. I'll try to be really quick. I started coming to El Salvador 30 years ago when my book came out. And I went down there because they were deporting MS-13 and 18th Street kids from LA. These are not transnational gangs from El Salvador. They're LA gangs. We made them transnational when we deported them. And not only that, we deported all these LA gangs to Mexico and all these other areas. So we were deporting these really rough kids that came out of the prison system, highly developed in the extortion, crime, all kinds of things. They were going to countries that didn't have this. I've been in Central America since the 80s. There was no MS-13. There was no gang, not like this. They changed the whole culture. We didn't provide anything when we deported. We just sent them over there. And then, so I was there, and I went to 10 prisons, and I was going to prison without any escorts. I was just going to prisons. People invited me. People would come in. Again, there's some Christian things going on. The other stuff was going on. I went in there. And in 2012, I came in there to do gang peace. For the first time, MS-13 and 18th Street were actually working on gang peace. It's got a lot of entanglements, but I would say one thing. I saw this. 70% of violence went down. The gangs had actually turned over guns. I was there. I witnessed this. I met with leaders of both gangs in prisons and in the street. Things went down, and I proposed zones of peace and security, zonas de paz y seguridad, in which MS-13, 18th Street, and communities could work together. They painted murals, they did gardening, they learned how to work in different workshops, learned some skills. We created these communities, 12 of them. They were doing very well. We even gave certificates to gang members. Right away, this is before Bukele comes in, right away, Mano Dura, the Iron Hand comes in. The U.S. government pressured El Salvadoran government to go after them, destroy these zones. And I know because I was there and I saw the police come right after we left. They destroyed them. By the time Bukele came in, the violence had gotten out of hand again. They weren't doing nothing for these kids. And one of the things that Bukele did, he got rid of, this is recently, all the arts and culture centers, because I was recommending arts and culture again to help people. He got rid of all of them. He set it up so, again, kids had nothing to do. It doesn't excuse people doing terrible things. I'm just saying that this is an environment that was created, and now he's created a system to try to address this, and that's not the way to address these issues.
Gabe, if you were to make a suggestion to ICE today, based on your experience, how would you be going about dealing with the immigration issues and the crime issues?
Well, they are gathering up a lot of bodies. It looks good for statistics.
Mm-hmm.
I don't believe it has an impact or a high impact on crime here. What would be going after violent offenders, which is what was promised, but isn't what happened. So if they really wanted to make a difference in crime, they would go after violent criminals. The individuals they're going after are essential part of the economy. So what they're doing is actually hurting the economy. It also was promised that grocery prices would go down. Mm-hmm. Who's picking the crops? It's undocumented workers, who's doing the construction? Who's doing we're here in Las Vegas, huge entertainment industry, hotels, casinos. The majority of people that work here are undocumented. There's a garment district in Los Angeles. I know Luis knows what I'm talking about. We were just there a few months ago. It was thriving. Mm-hmm. We were there the end of 2024. I understand now it's a ghost town because people are, even if they have papers, second generation with documents, they're afraid to go there because they're scared that they will be arrested, which a lot of U.S. citizens are being arrested. It's a similar thing what happened to Operation Bracero back in the 50s. They brought in, during World War II, they brought in a lot of undocumented workers from Mexico in particular. And then when the war was over, they were like, hey, time to go home. So they went in and arrested a lot of undocumented workers, but also got a lot of Mexican Americans who've been here for generations, some of them. And so we're seeing this very similar thing, I think, right now. It makes for good politics for some politicians who feel that they made that an issue. It's really a non-issue usually, but they feel it'll help them get reelected.
It sounds like we've been playing ping pong, going from one extreme to the other and back and forth, and it sounds like a lot of common sense is missing, and we could probably do better if we had some of the experience that you have, Gabe, and you have, Luis. And by the way, if you miss getting down to the Mob Museum to see these two gentlemen, there's some incredible educational and entertainment performances down here, and interactive as well. So thank you, Mob Museum. Thank you, Gabe. Thank you, Luis.
You're welcome.
We'll see you next week.